Why is having control over your motorcycle at slow speed so important? In fact, I'll go out on a limb here and I'll say that slow speed skills are one of the most important tools for you to develop as a rider. This week on MCrider, let's talk about it. I was sitting in a restaurant one day. I was eating lunch. I had my riding jacket draped over the chair next to me and my helmet on the far end of the table. A fellow rider came into the restaurant. He walked by the table and made a joke about me wearing a full-face helmet on such a hot day. I laughed and said, "Yeah, I agree, it's hot, but it's better than the alternative for me." Always wanted to mention MCrider because I believe it helps riders. I mentioned the site to him and the purpose of MCrider. He looked at me with a fair amount of anger, said, "I ride on the street, not on the parking lot." I thought, wow, that escalated quickly. I said, "To each his own, brother. Have a good day. I guess you can't win them all over." What I would have really liked to have done was taken this guy out to a parking lot with me and watch him ride in a controlled environment. It doesn't take a whole lot of skill to slowly release the clutch and get the motorcycle rolling down the road. Add a little more skill and you can stop a motorcycle smoothly and get around broad sweeping corners. Even guys who ride on the street can do that. But seat time on the street alone will only develop your skills so far. Throw in a distracted driver, a corner that's sharper than we thought or has gravel in it, and the rider who trains simply by riding in a straight line down the street is not prepared. What really shows what we're made of is riding in a controlled environment. Can you put the motorcycle right here? Can you stop the motorcycle right here? Can you control the motorcycle at slow speeds? Slow speed exercises are what MCrider members will find in the field guide, but why are they so important? Well, let's look at several reasons. First, slow speed exercises carry less risk. It's just common sense to realize that the faster you go, the higher the risk is of serious injury. Now, that doesn't mean that the risk of crashing or dropping your motorcycle goes up the faster you go, but the risk of serious injury does. For instance, a lot of riders avoid the highway because of the perceived risk, but riding in town where more traffic has a chance to intersect your path of travel actually increases the chance of a crash. So riding on the highway may reduce the odds of a crash, but if you are in a crash on the highway, the injuries may be worse because of the higher speeds. Now this brings us to a second thing to consider, is that most crashes or drops occur at slower speeds. Why is that? Well, it's because riding a motorcycle at slow speed is more difficult than riding at road speed. When you're riding at 15 miles per hour or above, it's really hard to get that motorcycle out of balance. The centrifugal force of the wheels keeps the motorcycle upright and moving down the road. In fact, without interference from us, the motorcycle would be quite happy to go in a straight path at a steady speed. It's when we get involved and we grab the brakes or we fail to negotiate a curve that the motorcycle begins to get out of sorts. As riders, our goal should be to be a guide for the motorcycle and not feel like we're controlling the motorcycle.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
In fact, the more you feel like you have to manhandle or control the motorcycle and force it to bend to your will, the more you're going to struggle to effectively ride and ride smoothly. That's why riding instructors often tell riders to relax. Think of it as guiding the motorcycle and not controlling the motorcycle, and it will help you to ride a whole lot smoother. But perhaps the biggest reason why riding in a parking lot is so important is because riding at slow speed forces the rider to master the techniques of riding. Have you ever struggled with U-turns on a motorcycle? If so, you don't have a motorcycle problem, you have a technique problem. If we can teach riders the proper technique of a U-turn and get them to perform the technique, U-turns suddenly get a lot easier. Now this is true of all kinds of riding skills: emergency braking, U-turns, good eye placement and discipline, using body position properly, using the proper clutch and throttle control. All of those things require the proper technique. It's all about the technique. The best place to learn technique with the least amount of risk to you and your motorcycle is not out on the street, it's on a parking lot. Not just riding circles on a parking lot, that won't do you a whole lot of good, but take a class that's in a controlled environment, or get the field guide and practice skills that will help you develop your skills out on the street. I started a new MCrider Facebook group the other day, and you can find more information and join it at mcrider.com/fbgroup, so mcrider.com/fbgroup. But in that Facebook group, one of the MCrider viewers shared a story of a crash he had while practicing emergency braking out on a parking lot. He states that the lot was a little too small that he chose, and when he increased the speed of the drill, he panicked, grabbed the front brake, and crashed. In the process, he tore the ACL in his knee and the meniscus, so he came out of it with some injuries. You might hear that story and think, man, that was a failure. But I hear it and I think it was a huge success, even in spite of his injuries. What would have happened if he was out on the road with traffic around? What would have happened if a car in front of him forced that panic stop? Now the rider knows what he needs to work on. Now the rider knows he needs to further develop his skills for the road. On the street, in traffic, with a huge F-150 bearing down on you is not the time to figure out that old emergency braking thing that they taught you back in the MSF class. The parking lot is where you learn the proper techniques, not out on the road. It's where you develop those skills and ingrain them into your muscle memory. Of course, you don't want to crash and cause an injury out on a parking lot either. But trust me, it's much better than crashing out on the street. Till next week, guys, it's Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road.